In the deepest corner of the galaxy, wrapped in burning light from a dying star, floated a prison no one ever escaped. Its name was Black Star Omega, but the inmates had another name for it, the Cage of No Return. It wasn't just metal walls or laser fences that kept prisoners inside. It was the fear. Fear of the guards, fear of the AI that ran the systems, fear of the silence that filled your ears after your last scream. It was a place built not just to hold the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy, but to erase them. No court, no trial, just darkness, chains, and endless time. Inside its cold metal belly were killers, warlords, mind-burners, and monsters. But when a human was thrown into cell for 7 beach, chained, bloodied, and broken, something changed. Something began to stir. The human's name was Ethan Kane. His eyes were sharp. Face bruised, wrists chained in a special alien metal that burned when touched. 2 7-foot guards hulking insectoid. Brutes called the cord, ragged him through the hallway, while laughing in their own clicking language. They said humans were soft, weak, useless. They said Ethan would die before the next planetary cycle. As they tossed him into his dark cell, one leaned down and hissed, "Try not to cry too loud. The walls are hungry." The door slammed shut. Behind him with a hiss of steam, but Ethan didn't scream, he didn't cry, he didn't even curse. He just sat in the corner of the cell, back straight, hands still cuffed. There was no bed, no light, just cold metal, and the slow drip of water from a cracked ceiling pipe. Most inmates went mad in the first few hours, but not him. He waited. From a hidden surveillance room above the prison wing, a tall, thin alien with translucent skin watched Ethan on a holographic monitor. Warden Mix, a being known for erasing rebellions with a whisper, narrowed his eyes. "What is this creature?" he muttered. "Right. Why isn't it breaking?" The AI that monitored emotional patterns in prisoners responded coldly. Subject 47B. Displays no signs of fear, no elevated heart rate. Neural patterns. Unreadable. Impossible, Mix said. No one resists Black Star Omega. Down in the cells, time moved slowly. Days passed. Other prisoners screamed, wept, begged for release. The guards enjoyed breaking them. They starved the weak, tortured the strong. But Ethan remained silent, even when they beat him. Even when they shocked him. Even when they isolated him in total darkness for 3 full cycles. Still no reaction. Soon, the other prisoners started whispering. First the Skarn, a lizard-like killer who'd eaten his own cellmate. Then the Lernok twins. Mind readers who couldn't read Ethan's thoughts. Then even the guards started avoiding 47B's corridor. "He's not normal," one whispered. "He watches us through the walls," said another. "He never sleeps." But Ethan did sleep. Lightly, with one eye half open, listening, measuring, waiting, every footstep, every camera turn, every guard patrol. He logged it all in his mind, because Ethan Kane wasn't just some Earth criminal. He was once a Black Ops commando, trained to survive anywhere. Even here, he didn't want revenge. Not yet. He didn't even want escape. Not yet. He wanted answers. Why had he been thrown here without a trial? Why did Earth pretend he no longer existed? Who was behind the order to make him vanish into this hole? Then one night, if night even existed inside Black Star Omega, the power flickered. Just for a second, the lights went out across an entire wing. Cells slammed shut. Security. Doors locked. Emergency lights failed. In the dark, someone screamed, and another scream, and then ... silence. When power returned, 3 guards were missing. Cameras showed nothing. Their weapons were found, twisted and broken, still hot to the touch. In cell 47B, Ethan sat just where he always did, calm, silent, still, except now. The cuffs were gone. In the control room, Warden Mix stared at the screen, frozen. The AI said, "Subject for 7B, is no longer restrained." "How?" Mix whispered. "How did he?" The screen glitched, briefly, for less than a second. In that flicker, Ethan's eyes stared directly into the camera, as if he knew where it was, as if he was looking back. He smiled, Not wide, not angry, just enough to send a message. You locked me in. Now watch what happens. And far away, in the galaxy's highest council chamber, a silent alert triggered. A file. Marked classified. Kane Protocol blinked to life after 10 years of silence. Single red warning flashed across it. If found alive, do not engage. But it was too late. The galaxy's deadliest. Prison hadn't broken the human. It had set him loose. The walls of Black Star Omega had witnessed every kind of madness. Screams, riots, executions, and prisoners tearing out their own eyes just to stop seeing the darkness. But no wall, no system, no warden, had ever seen what Cell for 7B now held. Ethan Ken, the only human ever brought into the galaxy's deadliest prison, was no longer in chains. Yet he wasn't trying to escape. He was sitting calmly on the cold floor, back straight, eyes closed, like a man in meditation. Or maybe like a predator, conserving energy before the slaughter. Guards were terrified. They stopped patrolling his wing. Cameras showed nothing abnormal, but they knew. Something had shifted. They used drones to deliver food, now sliding it under the cell gate and pulling back fast, like someone tossing meat to a wild animal. But Ethan never touched the food. He didn't eat for 3 days, then 4, then 5. No weakness showed, no fatigue. He just waited, calculated. Inside his mind, every sound, every movement in the prison was being mapped. Every energy fluctuation, every breathing pattern. He knew when the main power core cycled. He knew when the AI rotated visual sweeps. He even knew when the prison's outer walls vibrated slightly, meaning a nearby black hole had shifted. They thought he was broken. They didn't realize he was learning the rhythm of the beast. Elsewhere in the AI control chamber, alarms were ringing. Black Star Omega's central AI, called Wardenet, ran full diagnostics. Inmate 47B displays no fear, no panic. Neural activity, inconsistent with all known species. Warden Mix stood behind the screen, cold sweat on his long neck. He's not acting like prey, he whispered. He's hunting, from inside a cage. And yet, no one could touch him. When 2 elite enforcer units were sent to check on him, armed with grav rifles and shock nets, they disappeared. No footage, no audio. Only a smear of burnt metal left behind. The other prisoners began to talk, not in hate, not in jealousy, but in awe. The Skarn called him the Phantom. The Lernock twins said his mind was a storm they couldn't see into. And the Jurassic Queen, who hadn't spoken in 40 years, whispered to her guards, "The human is not caged. The prison is." Ethan watched it all unfold, not with pride, not with anger, but with focus, because he didn't want escape. Not yet. He wanted the truth. He had been captured on a distant planet Earth, long gone from his reach. His unit had been left behind. No charges, no trial. Just betrayal. Someone from within the Earth's coalition had wanted him erased, but they hadn't killed him. Their mistake. One night, an alien inmate, a telepath from the acid moons of Saru, untried to read his mind while Ethan appeared asleep. Within seconds, the telepath began screaming, clutching his skull. He bashed his head against the wall until he passed out cold, blood dripping from every orifice. When guards questioned what happened, the only words the creature managed before slipping into a coma were, "It's not a mind. It's a maze made of knives." After that, no one tried again. Ethan began building something in his cell using scraps. He collected small things no one thought mattered. Wire from a maintenance drone, metal slivers from a broken food tray, dust from the walls. Everyone thought he was just passing time, but he was building a map, not of the prison layout, no. He already had that memorized. He was building a map of behavior guard rotations, patrol routes, drone delays, electrical pulses, heat vents, blind spots. Black Star Omega was meant to be perfect. But nothing is perfect when it runs by routine. On the 8th day, something strange happened. A high-ranking alien inspector from the Galactic Council arrived unannounced. She demanded to see Ethan. She brought 6 guards with her, wearing armor designed to withstand plasma fire. She entered cell for 7B. The door closed behind her. Cameras were disabled. 10 minutes passed. When the door reopened, the inspector walked. Out alone, no blood, no screams, just her face, pale and shaking. She walked straight to her ship, refused to speak to anyone, and left orbit within minutes. Warden Mix tried to contact her. No response. Her final report was marked. Subject 47B is not a prisoner. He is a war event. Recommend full evacuation of Block 7. But it was already too late, because Ethan Kane wasn't waiting anymore. He had learned enough now. It was time to begin. The guards at Black Star Omega had a saying, "The cell never fights back." The prison itself was designed for total control gravity stabilizers, atmospheric suppressors, neural disruptors. No one escaped. No one resisted for long. Wasn't a place built to hold life. It was built to drain it. And yet now in Cell for 7B, the rules were breaking. One by one. Ethan Kane, the only human ever thrown into the galaxy's most dangerous prison, had changed everything. Not with weapons. Not with an army. But with silence, patience, and something far worse than fear purpose. The other inmates used to scream, fight, claw at the walls. Now they sat still, listening. They didn't listen to guards. They didn't listen to threats. They listened to him, the human, the ghost. In Cell 47B, word had spread like wildfire, though no one knew how. There were no messages, no calls. But somehow everyone knew that the human was planning something. They didn't know what. But they could feel it in the air, like static before a storm. Warden Mix tried to contain it. Guards were doubled. AI drones patrolled non-stop. But it didn't matter. Whenever anyone tried to confront Ethan directly, something went wrong. Drone simply shut down mid-hover and crashed into the floor. Another lost all its visual feed inside for 7B. And emerged with its cameras melted from the inside out, and the guards. They stopped entering the cell completely. They claimed they could hear something inside, something breathing that wasn't human. Still, the warden ordered action. Shut it down. Enter the cell. Take them apart if you have to. So the guards prepared an elite Team 6, heavily armored beasts from the Brule race designed for close combat, so their claws could cut through steel. Their armor could tank plasma. Fire. They stormed Cell for 7B with full force. And the prison shook. Screams echoed down the black corridors. Not human screams, but Brule roars filled with confusion and terror. Then came the crunching sounds. Snapping. Static interference. Then, silence. When the doors opened again, the elite team was gone. No blood. No bodies. Just pieces of armor neatly stacked in a corner. And Ethan. He sat in the same place as always. Calm, still. His eyes met the camera again. Not angry, not wild, just focused, unbreakable. That moment changed the entire prison. Guards refused to go near Cell 47B automated systems, rerouted patrols. The AI classified the human as level Omega threat rank, given only to planetary level. Extinction events. And still, Ethan never made a move to escape. He didn't need to. The prison was changing for him. He began constructing again, not with tools, with trash. With broken metal slivers, bits of circuitry, dust particles filtered through the air vents. Anyone else would have made junk. Ethan made something precise, small, hidden, dangerous. One night a power fluctuation rippled through the entire West. Wing. Nothing major. A flicker. Lights blinked. Doors stuttered. But for Ethan, that flicker was planned. When the power returned, crack had formed in the back wall of his cell, too small for anyone to notice, unless they knew what they were. And Ethan always knew what to look for. Meanwhile, rumors exploded across the inmate population. The Jurassic Queen passed a whispered message through her guards. The human is no longer a prisoner. He's a test, and we are failing. Down in the lower levels, gangs that had ruled for years began falling apart. Alliances shifted. Leaders went silent. Because somehow, without ever speaking to them, Ethan had started moving the pieces of the prison like a chessboard. Rivalries ended overnight. Enemies vanished. Even the most violent creatures kept their eyes away from Cell for 7B. He had turned a cell into a war zone without ever lifting a weapon. In the surveillance room, Warden Mix stood watching the data scroll across his screen. He hadn't slept in days. The AI showed him Ethan's vitals still stable. No stress, no fatigue. Just constant activity in the brain, like a fire that never dimmed. "Pull him out," Mix whispered. "Transfer him to isolation level 0. No oxygen. No light. Shut everything down," system responded. "Transfer impossible. Subject has overridden environmental protocols." Mix's skin turned cold. "What?" the AI repeated. "Ethan Kane now controls internal atmosphere systems within Block 7. That meant one thing. He wasn't just surviving. He was rewriting the prison from the inside, and the galaxy had no idea what was about to be released. The inmates whispered through the air vents now, too afraid to speak aloud. They passed words. Like contraband, careful not to draw attention. But one name echoed across the cells, always in hushed tones: Ethan Kane. He was no longer a mystery. He was a presence, a force, a growing shadow that moved without movement, killed without blood, and built a prison within the prison of fear, and he was its warden. Black Star Omega, once thought unbreakable, was slowly collapsing from the inside, and most didn't even know it. Not because walls were falling, not because security was failing, because Ethan was turning prisoners into weapons. It started small. He never spoke to anyone directly. But somehow, the gang war stopped. The killings ended. Power shifted. Leaders gave up control to silence. It wasn't orders. It wasn't threats. It was a feeling like a storm gathering behind locked doors. Every inmate, no matter how powerful, felt the same thing. If you opposed Ethan Kane, you would vanish. In cell for 7B, Ethan moved with deliberate calm. His hands, once shackled, now held scraps of wiring, fragments of logic boards, stolen from the walls over the last 7 days. Every piece was smuggled in without detection. Not by force, but through cooperation. The guards didn't even know. They were helping him. The prisoners didn't even realize they were carrying messages, because Ethan hadn't just built a map of the prison's layout. He had mapped minds. He understood how each species thought, how they reacted to fear, to control, to silence. And he used that knowledge to bend them, not loudly, not violently, but with perfect pressure at the right points in the security chamber above Block 7. Warden Mix watched a live feed from 47B. No sound. Just the human building something with metal fragments, a cold light in his eyes. The AI chimed in. Subject: 47B is assembling unauthorized technology. Classification: unknown. Mix leaned forward. Is it a weapon? Unclear. Components are non-lethal, but design suggests strategic coordination tool. What kind of tool? The AI paused, then replied, it may be a command node, it may be a decoy, or it may be a message. A message? To who? Hours later, the answer came. Without warning, every door on Block 7 clicked unlocked for exactly 3 seconds. Long enough to confuse guards. Just long enough to make every prisoner freeze. But no one moved. No one tried to escape, because they knew. It wasn't a mistake. It was a test, and it wasn't from the prison. It was from Ethan Kane that night. Strange things happened. 3 guards who'd previously tortured prisoners suddenly turned up inside their own lockers, live, but unconscious. One AI drone patrolling the lower corridors exploded from a logic loop that no one could explain. And the water supply in Block 7 was rerouted clean, fresh, and untouched by standard prison controls. None of it made sense. Until Warden Mix pulled up the internal diagnostics and saw the impossible. Command authority. Transferred cell 47B. For 1 full second, the prison's systems had followed Ethan's code. Not the AI, not the warden, not galactic protocol, but a human. A single prisoner with no official record, no citizenship, no name in the council's database. He shouldn't even exist. Panicked, the warden ordered a neural strike. Scramble his brain, shut him down. Now the AI responded coldly, unable. Subject has rerouted all neural feed nodes. How? Unknown. Now the prison wasn't just reacting to Ethan Kane. It was obeying him. And the scariest part? He hadn't left his cell. He hadn't raised a hand. He hadn't killed anyone yet. Because this wasn't just about escape. Ethan wasn't trying to run. He was waiting, watching, letting the fear build. Letting the warden burn his own authority. Down piece by piece. Because the truth was simple. Ethan Kane didn't need to break out of Blackstar Omega. He was going to take control of it. And when he did, the rest of the galaxy would be next. For the first time in centuries, Blackstar Omega Prison, built at the edge of a dying star, hidden behind gravitational storms, went into silent lockdown. No alarms, no flashing lights, just a system-wide freeze. Doors stopped opening. Lights dimmed. Communication links to the outside were cut. It was as if the entire structure held its breath. And at the center of it all, sitting calmly in cell for 7B, was a single human, Ethan Kane. No one moved without his permission now. The guards were no longer guards. The prisoners were no longer prisoners. Everyone inside Blackstar had become part of a machine, and Ethan was the only one holding the gears together. Not with violence, not with threats, but with a terrifying kind of control. The kind only someone truly broken could master. Warden Mix watched him through surveillance, sweat forming beneath her exoskin. "He's not supposed to be real," she muttered. "One human can't do this." But Ethan wasn't just a human anymore. Not after what they had done to him. Not after what he had learned in the early days. When he was first brought to Blackstar, they thought he was just another violent species with too much pride. He had no record in galactic databases, no official alliance. The Council didn't even recognize Earth as a spacefaring power. Ethan had been labeled non-strategic threat level. It's just another body to throw in the void. They didn't know he had once been a special operations commander. They didn't know Earth's wars were fought in shadows. They didn't know humans didn't just survive torture. They learned from it. And they really didn't know that Earth had secretly sent Ethan on a mission and then lost contact. Because Earth was watching, and Earth hadn't forgotten him. But before help could arrive, Ethan had to do something first. Something no human had ever done. Take control of the galaxy's most secure prison from the inside out. He was close now. Very close. In the mechanical guts of Blackstar Omega, Ethan's small hidden network was fully operational. A dozen inmates representing species from across the galaxy were now loyal to him. Not because of fear, but because he gave them. Something no other force in the galaxy had given. A chance to matter. Some were murderers. Others were victims of galactic politics. All had been forgotten. All had been erased. He spoke to them in the dark. He shared a truth that cut deeper than pain. This place was built to erase us. But what if we turned it into something worse? What if we made it remember us forever? The prisoners didn't cheer. They didn't shout. They simply followed. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council had finally noticed. Warden Mix's desperate transmissions, scrambled and distorted, had reached a military relay station. Response team was assembled in ours. 6 elite ships, hundreds of troops. IA-controlled heavy. Drones. The best the galaxy could offer. Their mission? Retake Blackstar Omega. Kill the human. As the fleet approached the prison's dark orbit, their scanners picked up strange anomalies. Power surges, structural shifts, and something far more dangerous. Signal. A human signal. Encrypted. Silent, but pulsing like a heartbeat. Inside cell 47B, Ethan smiled. Its plan had worked. The Council had sent a fleet. Good. Let them come. He turned to the Stolen. Interface built from scraps and old prison tech activated the final sequence. Across the prison, defense turrets flipped positions. Anti-air batteries came online. Security drones redirected their targets. And for the first time in recorded history, Blackstar Omega prepared to fight back. Not as a prison, but as a weapon. The man they tried to lock away forever had just turned their deadliest cage into a fortress. And when the Council ships crossed into orbit, they weren't rescuing anyone. They were entering a trap built by one angry human. A human who had already broken the chains meant to hold him now. He would break the galaxy itself. The council ships came in fast, sleek destroyers cutting through the black like silver knives. Their hulls shimmered with pulse shielding, bristling with plasma batteries and auto-lock railguns. On board, elite soldiers from across the galaxy locked into formation, their minds linked with Battle A, as they had faced warlords, insurgents, even machine rebellions. But none of them, not even the oldest veterans, had ever fought inside Blackstar. Omega. And they had never fought a human like Ethan Kane. Inside the prison, alarms stayed silent. The corridors pulsed red, not in panic, but in rhythm-controlled, timed, a heartbeat, Ethan's heartbeat. He stood in the command node formerly abandoned. Maintenance shaft and watched the enemy fleet approach on a cracked holoscreen. The screen flickered, but it was enough. He didn't need clarity. He just needed timing. His small Crutwelve inmates, hardened by pain, betrayal, and years of isolation, stood ready. Each one had a task. Each one had sworn loyalty not to Ethan's cause, but to his rage. It's a kind of rage that made you fearless. It's a kind of rage that made you dangerous. The moment the first Council destroyer crossed Blackstar's outer kill zone, Ethan whispered, "Let them burn." The defense grid awoke like a monster from a long sleep, hidden beneath. The prison's skin were weapons even the Council had forgotten. Not meant for war, but for erasure. EMP mines detonated mid-space, blinding the destroyers. Gravity disruptors flared, pulling two of the ships into a spiral. One collided with debris and vanished in a fireball. The other spun out of formation, scrambling to regain control. Inside Blackstar, turrets rotated with mechanical precision, locking onto approaching drones. The prison's own AI, once broken and dormant now, followed only one command line: protect the human at all costs. Warden Mix, trapped in her secured office, watched in horror. This wasn't a revolt. It was an uprising executed with surgical precision. She reached for the emergency override, but the screen flashed. Red dot access denied. Ethan had taken everything down in the main vault corridor. Explosives planted by his team tore open long-sealed armories. Prisoners armed themselves with stolen energy rifles, pulse grenades, and ancient plasma blades. Many of them had forgotten how freedom tasted. Now they were the storm. One by one, boarding parties tried to breach the prison. The Council had trained them for chaos, for alien tactics, for madness. But they had not trained them for human discipline born in hell. Ethan met the first breach team head-on. He didn't roar. He didn't waste words. He moved like a ghost fast. Silent, lethal. His shots were clean. His aim was perfect. He knew their armor. He knew their tactics. He had studied their response times down to the second. Behind him, prisoners followed, not like savages, but like soldiers. They fought not for escape, but for vengeance. One by one, the elite teams fell. Hallways ran red, smoldering drone parts littered the ground. In one corridor, a Council officer dropped his weapon, falling to his knees. "We surrender," he shouted. Ethan walked up slowly, eyes cold. "There are no chains left here," he said. Then he turned his back, and let the prisoners decide. They did. By the time the Council realized the assault was failing, it was too late. 3 of the 6 ships had been disabled. One tried to escape the gravity pull and exploded. The last 2 pulled back, limping. Ethan didn't chase them. He didn't need to. He had made his point, the galaxy's most secure prison thought. To be impenetrable had fallen to one human and a handful of forgotten inmates. Not through brute force, through patience, anger, and a plan built on pain. As silence settled over Blackstar Omega once more, Ethan stood atop the prison tower, looking into the stars. Somewhere out there, Earth was watching. Somewhere out there, the Council was terrified, and somewhere deep inside him, a new fire had lit. Because this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. They thought they could bury him, break him, forget him. Now they would remember his name. Ethan Kane had declared war. And the galaxy had just heard the first shot. Smoke curled from the shattered turrets. Fires raged through corridors once silent and cold. Debris drifted like ash in orbit, all that remained of the Council's elite assault fleet. Black Star Omega no longer looked like a prison. Irate and growed like a battlefield. Standing at its blackened heart, Ethan Kane stared out into the galaxy face, calm, eyes cold, voice low. We're not finished. His crew, bloodied but alive, gathered around him. 12 had started the rebellion. Now 9 remained. Scars across their faces told stories no one had ever asked to hear. But now the galaxy would listen because Ethan had shown them something they never believed possible that the system could. Bleed. The Council was in shock. They hadn't just lost ships. They hadn't just lost men. They'd lost control. For centuries, their prisons were symbols of fear, their fleets unmatched, their order absolute. Up! But in just days, one human and a group of forgotten inmates had flipped that entire belief upside down. Across thousands of systems, whispers began a name pass like wildfire. Ethan Kane, the human who burned a black star. The Council tried to contain the news. They cut transmissions, denied the event, blamed external sabotage. But the footage leaked anyway. Gritty helmet cam vids, panicked calls for backup. The haunting echo of a single human voiceover hijacked comes. You locked the wrong man in the wrong cell. And in those words, the cracks in the Council grew. Meanwhile, beside the now human-controlled Black Star Omega, Ethan moved with purpose. He wasn't celebrating. He wasn't resting. He was planning. Every inch of the prison was being fortified. Not to hide, to strike. This is no longer a prison, he told his crew. It's a warship. Using the stolen tech from destroyed Council ships, they began weaponizing the station itself. Every corridor was rigged with defense nodes. The broken AI had been rebuilt, reprogrammed, and given a new name, Reckoner. And it followed only one directive: now hunt the Council. But not everyone in the galaxy cheered. Some feared what Ethan represented. Because if one human could do this, what else were they capable of? Quietly, a coalition began to form, not just Council worlds, but fringe colonies, exiled mercenaries, and broken regimes. Enemies who once hated each other now whispered about a shared fear. The human can't be allowed to lead. Called him a terrorist, a war criminal, a rogue element. But Ethan didn't care what they called him. He had one mission left. Earth, no. One had heard from it in years, yet the Council claimed it had been preserved. A quiet word for planetary lockdown. They said Earth was under protection. But Ethan knew better. He had seen the orbital burns. He had seen what they did to colonies that disobeyed. Earth hadn't been preserved. It had been imprisoned the same way they tried to imprison him, and now he was going back. But to get there, he needed more than a stolen prison. He needed allies, weapons, chaos. So he lit the stars on fire. Black Star Omega began to move, slowly, impossibly. The engines, long dormant, came alive. Systems across the galaxy panicked as the prison left its orbit and became a mobile fortress. And with every new system it crossed, it left a message burned into the grid. Ethan Kane is coming. Some rebels joined him. Some worlds offered resources, ships, names. Others resisted and fell. Ethan didn't want war. But if the galaxy forced him to fight, then he would show them what war really looked like when it was driven by a human heart filled with fury, loyalty, and grief. He had no flag, no government, no commander above him, but still he marched. And behind him, the prisoners followed. Behind him, hope rose in broken places. Fear spread in power circles. and in the dark corners of the universe, where silence once ruled, the stars now burned red with warning, because Black Star Omega had a new master, and the galaxy had run out of cages. The final battle was no longer a matter of if. It was only a matter of when the skies over Earth split open. From every major observatory across the planet, from outposts buried deep in the Andes, to orbital scanners humming silently in the void, the alert came at once. Unidentified massive object entering. Sol system. They had expected death. They had been conditioned to believe the Council would return one day with fleets of warships, with fire and judgment. But what appeared above them wasn't a Council armada. It was Black Star Omega, a prison-turned-fortress, a legend-turned-weapon, a ghost-turned-symbol. And at its center stood Ethan Can, the man they had tried to erase, the name they thought forgotten now. The whole world remembered. Across Earth, people gathered beneath the skies. Some were afraid, others wept, but many, many smiled, because the man they'd once watched dragged away in chains was now leading the fire back home. The Council scrambled to respond. Dozens of ships warped in from the edge of the system. Diplomats screamed on emergency channels. Propaganda bots flooded networks calling Ethan a madman, a destroyer, a traitor to his species. But Ethan said nothing. His answer came in silence, sand then in thunder. He didn't fire first. He waited. And, like clockwork, the Council fired on him. Their mistake, Black Star Omega activated everything. Modified cannons, stolen shields, AI-calculated countermeasures. What once was a prison now fought like a beast with a mind of its own. Council ships fell in waves, torn apart by a station they thought couldn't even move. And then, Ethan made his final move. He opened the hangars, not to unleash missiles, but to release prisoners. Thousands, humans, aliens, soldiers, scientists, innocents locked away for speaking the truth. Fighters broken by time, fear, or memory. Now they spilled out of the fortress in scavenged ships and stolen armor, an army of the forgotten dot, and the Earth stood still as it watched its exiled children return as warriors. Ethan's voice finally echoed, across all frequencies. You locked us away. You tried to erase us. You built prisons to bury our voices. But we're still here. And now we decide what freedom means. The Council tried to retreat. They begged for talks. They sent diplomats. Ethan sent them wreckage. The battle was not long, not anymore. The Council had never prepared for a fight on Earth. They thought they'd ended this fight before it began. But they had only lit the fuse. In one final push, Black Star Omega punched through the last of the blockade. Earth's skies lit with flames and the colors of rebirth. Ethan didn't touch the planet. He didn't need to. Earth was already rising. The prisons collapsed. Systems rebelled. Galaxy, watching with held breath, began to tilt. Whole sectors once ruled by fear began questioning everything. If one angry human could break the galaxy's most secure prison, if one human could turn inmates into legends, if one voice could echo so far that even the stars shook, what else could humanity do? The Council fractured. Some members fled, others surrendered, some vanished entirely. And from the ashes of power, a message spread, not of revenge, but of reckoning. Ethan didn't claim a throne. He didn't build a new empire. He gave the galaxy back to its people. Then he disappeared. Some say he returned to Earth and walks among the crowds, silent and calm. Others claim he went deeper into the stars, seeking more prisons to tear down. A few even believe he died on the bridge of Black Star Omega during the final surge, and what remains is only the legend. But one thing is certain: wherever injustice rises, wherever a cage is built, wherever fear is used to rule, a whisper follows. Ethan Kane was here, and in that whisper, across burned-out galaxies and rebuilding worlds, the Council's final lesson is repeated. Never underestimate the fury of a human who has nothing left to lose, because even the deadliest prison in the galaxy couldn't contain just one angry man.